Do you remember at the beginning of the chapter when we did this? Find the range of y equals 2x plus 1 if the domain is. Do you remember when we did that? And I don't like the set notation. I think what most of us did was this. The domain of x. Domain, those are the values you plug in. Domain is the x. What is the range when it says find the range? The y, right. So we're supposed to find the range. Domain is x, the range is y. And how did we do that? Right. Those x values, the ones in the domain, those are the values that we plug into the equation, right? And we want to know what is y. So we will take every one of those x values and plug it in. If I put in 0 here, what do I get for y? This would be 0 plus 1. What do I get? 1. If I put in a 1 there, uno, 2 plus 1. And if I put in 2, is that 5? So that was fairly easy, wasn't it? Fairly easy? Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. That's today's lesson. Almost. That's almost today's lesson. That's almost today's lesson. If you're following along, I'm like on page 142 or something like that. And today's lesson is called functions, which we did that in Algebra 1, but that was a long time ago. Functions are exactly the same thing right here, except instead of y, they call it f of x. So they will say find the range of f of x equals 2x plus 1 if the domain is, and it's exactly the same thing. Find the range, except now the range is not called y, it's called a function of f of x, right? And how do you find the f of x? You do the exact same thing. You plug the x's in here, wherever you see an x, you plug in the number and you just work it out. Isn't that easy? Mm-hmm. So if I ask you to find the range of f of x equals 3x, and the domain is 0, 1, 2, what will you do? Yeah, and you know what? I think I like the T-chart best. The book does it in set notation. They say the range equals this, but I don't like that, because then you can't tell which one goes with which one. If you put them in T-chart, then you know which one goes with which. So I have 0, 1, 2. If I put a 0 in here, 3 times 0 is? If I put a 1 in there, 3 times 1 is? If I put a 2 in there, I get? There's nothing hard about that part, right? Easy? Easy. Anybody with questions so far? Then the other part, find f of x. Oh, I can move it back over here now. In front of there. Find f of x. Here, I gave you two functions to begin with. This is what f of x is. This is what g of x. Notice, it doesn't have to be an f. It could be a g, it could be an m, it can be anything out in front of that x. So this one says we want f of 4. Here's what I like to do. I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm going to write down the f function. There it is. F of x equals 2x plus 1. But I want f of 4. You know what that means? That means wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a 4. So it's 2 times, oops, there's an x. What am I going to replace it with? 4. So like that, f of 4 equals, 2 times 4 is? Right? And what's 8 plus 1? So f of 4 equals 9. Do you remember doing that in Algebra 1? What about now if I ask you what is g of 4? It's 9, right? Well, we're going to take the g function. What is it? It's right here. X over 2, take away 1. But I want g of 4. You know what that means? That means wherever I see an x, what will I replace it with? 4. So I'm going to do 4 over 2, take away 1. Here's an x, replace it with a 4, over 2 equals 1. So what do I get? What is 4 over 2? 2? So 2 take away 1 is, g of 4? Looks like I get 1, right? Everybody good so far? Anybody with questions so far? One last. This is called a compound function because it's got more than 1. Well, forget about the functions for a minute. If you have parentheses like that, a bunch of them, where do you start? On the inside. You start on the inside. Well, the same is true for these functions. We're going to start on the inside and find g of 2. So we're going to start by finding g of 2. What's the g function again? It's right there. X over 2, take away 1. And we want g of 2. You know what that means? Wherever you see an x, you're going to replace it with a 2. So there's a 2. What is 2 over 2? 1. So I have 1 take away 1, which is 0. Oops. G of 2 equals 0. Now, go back up to the top. See right here I have a g of 2. I'm going to take that out. And what will I put in its place? What is g of 2 equal to? 0. So I'm going to take out the g of 2 and I'm going to plug a 0 in here. So really, what will I be looking for now? F of 0. Because 0 is what g of 2 is equivalent to. Now I'm going to take that f function. What was the f function again over there? 2x plus 1. Like that? Yeah. And I want f of 0. So wherever I see an x, what will I replace it with? Yeah. Here I see an x. What am I going to replace it with? 0. So f of 0 equals 0, 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1. So what is f of 0? 1. You know what that means? That means that f of g of 2 equals what? 1. It's right there. It's equal to 1. That's your final answer. But you have to do it in 2 parts. You have to do this middle part first, figure out what that's equal to, and then substitute that back in, and now find f of 0. What you get down here for f of 0, that is your final answer. That's your final answer. That is the final answer. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Anybody with questions? Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? So I have an assignment. Make sure you're on page 144, not 143. So 1 through 11, the odds, you can thank me later. And then I have 35, 37, 39. And that's all. Did I ask if there were questions? No. Oh yeah, because I asked. I asked. Oh, my